Hello, welcome to 1874. Apologies for our tardiness. Life gets in the way sometimes, and you have the best intentions of starting on time, but for some reason for us, it never seems to align and never seems to happen. I'm Dan Bardell here for a transfer talk on 1874 with the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell, always looking around for what's going on in the transfer world. So it's great to talk to Jacob today. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, we're slightly delayed, but it's partly because of your gym regime, isn't it, Dan?
No. Let's not be let's not be blaming that. Let's not blaming
New
me.
the Birmingham Joe Wicks. I've heard you've been called.
Jeez, I wish I was. I said to you, I'm still out of breath. It was hours ago that I was at the gym. Should say this show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to get 20% off everything Luke have to offer, you can get yourself some gym wear, get yourself down the gym, and get 20% off. Code TVV20 does exactly that for you. Jacob, we're here, of course, to talk transfers, but before we do, let's give a little plug to your Ollie Watkins article. I read it last night as soon as it came out. Notifications on for Jacob Tanswell. I mean, that moment is one of my favourite moments that there's ever been for England, purely because it was a Villa player scoring the goal. I don't think I've ever celebrated an England goal as passionately as I did that. But what a story! What a rise in his career. He is just a phenomenon, and what's happened to him in the last 18 months? Wow.
Yeah, I was watching the game in a pub in a New Forest, and when he scored, everyone obviously knows that I cover Aston Villa. They're almost like they're thanking me in terms of I discovered him. But yeah, it's I think for people that don't watch him every single week, you probably think, yeah, he's a good striker. But obviously, seeing him every week, seeing him in a Villa shirt, especially this season or the last 18 months, he's been a phenomenon. And his finishing is, people thought at the time his finishing was, he could be wasteful, but you saw that goal was just the most ruthless, instinctive shot, and he practices it religiously. He practices it at Exeter, Western-super-Mare, Brentford, and he's really developed it under Embry, under the individual coach Rodri, and I could not be happier for him because you speak to a lot of players and they're often very media trained, but there's a few handful of players at Villa, Matty Cash, John McGinn, Ollie Watkins, British core, that are just really good guys that always come out that got really good personalities, very down to earth. And I think you can see it with celebrations how happy the England teammates were for him.
Yeah, I mean, he does miss chances. All strikers miss chances. Haaland misses chances. Kane misses chances. Lewandowski misses chances. The best strikers in the world miss chances. But it's those critical moments, and that's what he's done for Villa. When Villa have needed something, he's capable of scoring some ridiculous finishes. That we kind of saw that finish earlier on in the season against Chelsea. My first thought when it went in after I finished celebrating was, oh, that was very similar to the goal he scored at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge earlier on in the season. You're right to use the word ruthless because, yeah, he might not always be ruthless in front of goal, but he's got a ruthless finish in him. And the last minute to stop England having to go to extra time and probably have to endure penalties as a nation, it's just a monumental moment and a monumental goal.
Listen, he's ruthless. Obviously, Harry Kane is seen as the best goal scorer, and his career would suggest that. Of course, I'm not denying that, but you see the difference in speed in the box. Kane's, I think he's injured, but he looks leggy, he's quite slow. You see Watkins now, everything he does is so quick. Touch, bang, score. These are things that you work on in training in terms of patterns of play, movement, walkthroughs, and he does it so quickly. The backlift's very minimal. He's so quick, and when players and games are becoming quite tired and leggy, as in Euros they are at the moment, having a guy like him who's just so sharp and on the ball, I think that was part of the reason why he managed to get it through to Free's legs, is because he takes a shot so early, his first touch is so sharp. I think it was just an incredible finish, and the margin of error is so small, isn't it? But yeah, like you say, he's done it before. He did it against Chelsea, he did it for Exeter a number of times. I think a similar goal, maybe the first he scored against Fulham away from home this season, going through the defender's legs. Phenomenal goal, and yeah, I was absolutely delighted. I was stood on the table at the pub, and no one could get me off it for a while.
Yeah, my girlfriend's very smug because she's got a Ollie Watkins England shirt and I haven't. So she was very smug when that went in. I feel that shirt's risen in value in the last 48 hours or so. Back to your article, it's a really good article. You speak to a lot of people who've played against him, worked with him. His previous teams are current of modern day people in there as well, so it's well worth going and checking that out and subscribing if you're not already subscribed to the Athletic. And I've probably got some codes actually that I can send if people aren't subscribed to The Athletic and they want to get a taste of it. Just DM me on Instagram or Twitter, and the first 3 people that do it, or 4 people that do it, as many codes as I have, I will send you a code and you'll get The Athletic free for a month. And I promise you, once you start, you will not unsubscribe, because I've been subscribed now for 4 or 5 years, I think, however long it's been going. Obviously, I worked there for a little bit as well, so I did get it free for a period. But I have, I pay for it now. I pay for it now. So yeah, I've always had it since it's been a thing in the UK. So yeah, if you fancy a read of what's going on in the Athletic and Jacob's articles, first, however many codes I've got, the first people of that number that DM me, I will send you a code over today. Right then, Jacob, let's do what we've come here to do and talk transfers. Let's start with Philogene. Also, cards on the table. Greg and I were doing a pod earlier on in the week. Obviously, it was mainly focused on Morgan Rogers in the end, but we did do a whole section on Philogene. And then, as is the way when you're doing a podcast, you do a podcast, it records, you go about your day, you think brilliant, that's in the bank, and then suddenly loads of stuff comes out around that. So we had to take it out, basically, because a lot of what we've been talking about was completely irrelevant. But Jacob, I mean, this was partly your fault, because I think it was your article that ended up coming out. What is going on with Philogene? And then I will speak about what I think is going on with Philogene.
Yeah, so this probably will be dated in a few hours' time when we talk about it.
That's what we're just doing it live now. So it's live. This is the state of play now, live.
Yeah, so I think for a while, probably since he started really well for Hull, there was always that feeling from, I think, his camp that he would spend the season at Hull, try and get him into playoffs. Obviously, that did not materialise, and then move on into the Premier League. And I think the plan was to get that bridge between an elite club, Champions League level club like Aston Villa and Hull. So, Palace were being mentioned. Southampton were huge admirers of him before he went to Hull. I think that interest remained. Everton as well. And what's happened recently is obviously Ipswich, their Premier League money, want to spend that. Obviously, Jacob Greaves is done virtually, and Philogene, although they agreed a fee for both of them, it's a little bit more difficult because there's games being played from both sides, or camps from players' camp from the clubs that are interested in him, and for Philogene, I think there's more to consider. He's from London. He's very close to. He's in London. I think Ipswich, location-wise, is not the most preferable, but at the same time, it's still a really good opportunity for him to develop there. What's happened is that Everton are interested in him, but the Ipswich transfer did trigger everything into action, really, because Villa obviously had to decide within 72 hours whether they wanted to match the bid, which is well within their rights. But at the same time, because they had a 30% sell-on clause, although they've matched 18 million, it wouldn't be 18 million. It would be a 30% reduction. So I'm not great at maths, but whatever that is around 12.5. Yeah. So they could do that. And then if you take away the 5 million that Hull paid for him, it'll work out about 8 million. Or such, really, for Philogene. Emery's a big fan. I know a lot of people have said that Villa coming back in to try and inflate the price, but Emery's made it clear to them that he wants Philogene back. I think he's always been a big fan of him, but at the same time, they had to sell him last year for PSR purposes. That he wants him back, but I would be surprised if it happened, because Ipswich are a really good opportunity. Crystal Palace as well.
That's the one for me, Palace.
Yeah, and they've just sold a lease there, and I do feel if they really want him, they can get him. And Everton are just always in the race. They seem to be in the race for everyone, Everton, all the time. Just whether they can finalise the deal. So very complicated, and I think the players' camp are doing very well in terms of trying to drive interest and bids.
I mean, I recently started following his agent on Instagram, and it's one of the wildest Instagrams I've ever followed. You don't see any other football agent posting the way that his agent posts. Like everywhere he goes, he'll just post a picture. I'm at Everton today. I'll just post that. I might be on holiday in Barcelona, but I'll make it look like I'm there for transfer purposes. His Instagram is absolutely wild. Personally, I don't think he'll go to Villa. He left Villa because he wanted first team football. Fair play to him. I respect him for going off and doing that. He's really, really proved himself at Hull in the Championship. I think he is a Premier League player. Absolutely no doubt about that. Is he a top 4 Champions League player or even top 6 player? I'm not sure at this current point. I'm not saying he won't get there, but is he of that level yet? Probably not. There's a lot of obstacles in the Villa first team to get past for him to get regular game time. I just don't see it. My opinion was when it came out, and I tweeted straight away, there's more to this than meets the eye, because I knew about the 30%. So to me, it felt like Villa trying to bump the price. But obviously, they can get him for cheap. He would be a good player to have in the squad. Arguably, you get him in, and we've signed Lewis Dobbin for PSR purposes. He's probably further ahead than Dobbin, and Dobbin will probably be part of the first team squad this season. But I don't see a natural fit for him at Villa at the moment, however much Emery likes him. So for me, if I'm that player and I'm his agent, I'm saying Palace is the move for you. They're upwardly mobile. Yes, they've lost Elise, but they've got a good squad. They've got a brilliant manager that's going to progress you and make you a better footballer to then make the jump, make the big move. But sometimes with agents as well and people around you, they're in a hurry for you to make that bigger jump sooner than you're ready for. I think the move to Palace makes the most sense.
Yeah, in fairness to Philogene's camp, I think Barcelona was obviously on the table, and it was on the table. They looked at him, but at the same time, I think there was reservations, even though it's an exciting move from Philogene's camp in terms of playing time and how he would fare at Barcelona, given how big the club is and that he wouldn't be nowhere near the first team. So I think there is an eye on his development, but at the same time, there is a real keen desire to push him out there as much as they can. I think even Ipswich is great. I think Ipswich isn't closer to London would be ideal, but at the same time, they've got a really good manager, McKenna, very progressive. I think first year in the Premier League, it might be difficult, but he'll play. He'll get a lot of responsibility, and I think this next move is probably going to be a stepping stone where then it could go to Aston Villa. I think maybe one's moved too soon for Villa at the moment. At the same time, Emery does probably want cover for that right side of Leon Bailey, and Philogene would probably do that, but he just wouldn't get the game time if he was at Crystal Palace per se.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that's blurring the lines with this a little bit is the fact that he's already agreed terms.
Yeah, that
was done a year ago.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean anything. I've tried to say this to some of my friends. Just because you agreed terms a year ago, those terms aren't set. Well, they are set in stone, but it's not like he's agreed terms, so he's coming. He's agreed terms so that if he does choose to come, the terms are already there. That's very different to his agreed terms, and he's going to join, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's I think if you ask Philogene now, I'm not sure. I think Villas obviously has a bit of a hold on him because he was there. He wants to prove himself, but at the same time, I think he wants to prove himself away from Villa at this moment in time. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but I'd say it's quite unlikely he comes back to Villa. And I think for Villa, it's probably right to admire him from far, and then down the road, if they still want him, then yeah, they should go out and get him. But I think he's quite a quiet guy. I think his agent's obviously doing a lot of talking for him.
His agent's not quite.
By the sounds of it, but hopefully it gets done soon because it's becoming a bit unedifying at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always good to see the players back in pre-season as well. Yeah. You see the photos of everyone. Sometimes you see players that you forget are coming back to pre-season, has been the case with a couple of players. Dendoncker leading the way on the old long distance running. I forgot he was coming back. In all honesty, nice to see the training gear as well. We've seen Moussa Diaby is back. Obviously, wasn't involved in the Euro, so he's back with all the other players that weren't involved in internationals over the summer. A lot of big Saudi links to him at the moment. He was a player who could have gone to Saudi this time last year, chose to come to Villa. I think when you look at it overall, if you look at his stats for the season, I think you probably say that move was a success. His stats are hardly bad, but he did fade in the second half of the season. He wasn't the same player that we saw from maybe August through to November. It feels to me that if Villa got a big bid and they thought they could get someone in who would do better than him, they would sell him. So I think this might be one that happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Last year, it was a different Saudi Arabian club. This year, Al Ittihad. I think there is definite interest in there. It's just a case of how much they can get from him. Obviously, if they can get a profit on what they bought him for him last year, that'd be fantastic for Villa. But like you say, they would only get someone hit, or they would only sanction a sale for Diaby if they can get a player to replace him. And I think that player that can play just off the front of Watkins, like a João Felix, who Emery really admires, would be ideal. But at the same time, even if they don't get a João Felix, then you've got a Morgan Rogers and a Jacob Ramsey that could play in those positions. So, I think if Diaby did go it would have to be for a really good, impressive fee. But there is definitely interest in there, so that's something to definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah, McGinn and Tillemans obviously have played games in that number 10 position as well. So many multifunctional players at Villa who can play in different roles. I really do think the squad's in a decent place. But to start the season now, I think the squad's in a reasonably decent place. Probably still, I would say, maybe you would want another central midfielder.
Yeah,
maybe you'd want a number 10, especially if Rodgers leaves. What's going on with another forward player who may leave, John Duran? West Ham, that really came as a big thing a few days ago. He's gone quiet now.
Yeah, West Ham liked him in January, didn't they? They tried to do this weird loan with an option to buy, which I don't see any upside for Villa at the time. But, John Duran, I think, as we've said numerous times before, I think he will leave eventually, whether it's this summer or they kick the can down the road. But unless you can get through to Duran, I think it'll be very difficult. But obviously things are being delayed because he's, the Copa America involvement, which is difficult to do anything right now. But I expect once that's over in the next week or so, they'll start to, reports will start to come out again. And we're talking about agents at the moment, and Duran's agent likes to put a lot of things on his Instagram as well. So it's just
whether, I'd like to please ping me that over. I'm all for following these crazy agents.
It's just whether Emery feels he can get through to Duran, whether he feels that he can really develop into this top striker in the next 12 to 18 months, or does he need to go elsewhere? And I think if a really good offer comes in, I think you're looking at the 35, 40 million pounds mark. I think that'd be fantastic. Big profit on what they signed him for. And that'll give them money to reinvest into a proper, really good strikers that can dovetail and with Watkins and provide good backup as well. Because, Watkins, you like to think that, you like to hope he doesn't get injured, but he's been extremely clean with his injury record last year. So if he does, you need that guy that can come in, and the levels haven't dropped too substantially. Where I think if Watkins was out for any period of time last year, Emery probably wouldn't play Duran every single game like Watkins. I think he would probably have to compensate and play a false nine or something. So a big top striker would be great.
Yeah, talking to strikers, Chris Thayer, apologies for absolutely murdering your name there. He's asking about what the latest is with Cameron Archer. Again, we saw that he was back yesterday. Quite strange Instagram post from Villa. I thought, kind of just saying what we already knew. What's the latest with him? Because Villa will want to sell him. That I said on a pod the other day. Villa have almost accelerate too fast for players like Archer now. There might have been a pathway a couple of years ago, but there probably isn't now. So I think this will be one that goes late into the window.
Yeah, it wasn't the most warm tweet. Welcome back.
That's what I mean. It's a bit strange.
I think the reason why, obviously, Emery's confirmed that Archer's coming back in May, so it's not a secret. But I think the confusion was that Sheffield United apparently in their relief retain list put Cameron Archer in the retained bit. So there's a few question marks. I think Villa might have just put that out there for clarity. And I actually just say, listen, he is back. He's wearing the kit. He's in training. But like you say, the quicker they can push him out the door, the better. But I think it could be quite a good safety blanket in case of if Duran does come in and they don't get a striker. Worst case scenario, at least they do have somebody
till January.
Yeah, to fill in when they can. So they can't just go sell Duran and Archer and not replace them. So they'll try and get some good money for Archer, but it's a difficult market.
It's a big thing here, isn't it? We need to shift some players.
Yeah,
really, as Philogene's agent would say, it's bailiff season. We need to get some. We need to get some play. Some news just in. I think if this is correct, Chambers has just gone. Longest YouTube name in history. Just a load of numbers has just put that Chambers has gone in the chat. I saw him linked with Cardiff yesterday. Chambers, has that happened?
I haven't seen anything yet. I'll check. But yeah, yesterday was. I think reports of him being all done was premature. I don't know if it's the case now. But the reports, I think there was other clubs in the race, but a deal hadn't been agreed at that point, but there were talks ongoing. So I do expect it to be done in the next couple of days. But the only thing that could slow it is if there's interest from elsewhere. I think Villa, they won't get in the way, but it will be a nominal fee. There's 12 months left for his contract. Emery almost gave him a passing gift, didn't he, by starting him in the Crystal Palace game end of the season as a thank you for his service and application. But get Chambers out in the next week or so, and they can move on to other players as well.
Villa have tweeted apparently, so let's have a quick look live at what Ivy are saying.
Yes,
there we go. Yeah, he's gone. Doesn't say in the tweet where he's gone, but I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, I think it's for clarity, really, because
he's just left.
Yeah, they've allowed the difficulty for this summer and in January as well, when he was supposed to go on deadline day, was how he's going to go. Similar to Coutinho in a way, in terms of no one really don't want him anymore, but it's just whether a case of they pay out the rest of his contract, or a club's willing to offer him pay a nominal amount to let him go. So I'm glad it's happened, and it's
just gone.
Yeah, and
what's similar to what happened with him when he came to Villa, really, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's, what's the difference between Chambers and Coutinho is that it's probably cheaper to cut ties for Chambers than it is Coutinho.
I'm surprised he only played 36 times, to be honest. As I just saw, I'm imagining a lot of those were as a light substitute. But good luck to him. Never let the club down. I thought it was a touch of class from him when he came in for I think it was Forest at home. He came on and played the second half, and his social media post was very classy at that point.
And I also think a move to the Championship would be good for him. Rebuild as well, because he's not had consistent game time for ages, has he? So
yeah,
a Cardiff, which is likely, it's not done yet, but when it gets done, maybe imminently, I think that would be really good for him.
Yeah, I keep worrying every time my phone goes off that something's have changed with Philogene. I've got PTSD from recording the podcast with Greg earlier on in the week. I'm really worried about. I'm sure your phone's buzzing all the way through this as well. I know it was just before we came on with
I actually turned off my Wi-Fi and data just when I started this podcast. So.
It's very professional, Jacob. We're not used to that level of professionalism on this show at all. Honestly, might have been flashing up and distracting me the whole way through the show. Is there anything else of note transfer wise that we can talk about? And whilst we do that, if anyone's got any questions before we depart, then throw them in the chat.
Yeah, of course. I think
best to answer them.
I think the keys to watch out for the left back situation, whether Luca Dean and Alex Moreno leave. I think Illing June is really interesting to come into, because there's a sense that he could be a really good option at left back for Emery and Villa this season. I think they could use Moreno. He's got probably more interest than Luca Dean, and they could do some creative deals there. Luca Dean's going to be a key one, because if they can get him out of the wage bill, that'll be great for Villa in terms of reinvesting it. But he's very happy there, and I think a centre midfielder as well. I think a top class centre midfielder that can, replace essentially Douglas Luiz is quite pressing.
It was quite weird. I was just thinking as you were talking, and I managed to do this every show, and I'm not intending to, and I do it everywhere I seem to be on. I seem to do it not by mistake, but it just seems to happen. So like all the people we're naming about going are like Gerrard era signings. But then all the people that I would class as our best players are Dean Smith era signings. So that Gerrard era was just something that it was just a disaster. Chambers was Gerrard. We're talking, I've seen someone in the comments saying about Olsen, Coutinho. We've mentioned. We're now talking about Luca Dean. Like all these signings were made under Steven Gerrard. Yet the signings that were made before that by Dean Smith are. And I know it's not just Dean Smith. Obviously, there's a transfer committee in there as well. But do you take my point that the players that we talk about, they need to get rid of him. He's on high wages. Even Diego Carlos is mentioned as being someone who's disposable at the moment. The players are all in that little brief period that Steven Gerrard was there. It's amazing, really.
But what's worst thing is that actually probably the lower cost ones, like a Callum Chambers, are probably the better ones, because you probably think actually, if you take yourself back to when he signed, he's probably quite an understandable deal. He was at Arsenal, for where Villa were at that point, quite versatile, quite a solid signing. It's obviously not happened for him since then, but even on loan deals like Jan Bednarek, right, they didn't go very well either. So, but Luca Dean, I think, is really impressed in the last 12 months.
He's been good in 12 months.
Yeah, it's just obviously when he came in, it was for a very big fee, and a lot of money.
Yeah, long number YouTube guys also said Dendoncker is on a horror contract too. That was another Gerrard one. Jeez, honestly, that guy, his legacy lives on, doesn't he? Never go. His legacy at Villa. No one's really asked any questions in here. It is something about Agent Cooper asking about Austin McPhee. Does he stay? But I'm not seeing anything to suggest that Austin McPhee would be leaving. James Newbury's asked, will Cash be leaving? I think we can debunk that one pretty quickly and say no. Matty Cash won't be going. The new right back was obviously in training as well, wasn't he? Which was interesting. It'd be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think
I didn't even try and pronounce his name. You'll notice
Costa. Like we said a few weeks ago, I think the plan is for him to do pre-season. Emery to have a look at him, and if it's not And if he's good enough, then I think he can come into the team, and Kane Kessler-Hayden will move out on loan. But if not, then I think another right back would be really quite satisfactory.
Yeah, Mobley saying Ndidi not happening now, Dan. I've seen a few people having a pop at me about that. Honestly, you can't say anything. I didn't come on here and go, Ndidi's 100% going to sign. That's what's going to happen. I said there was interest there, which is true. I didn't say he's definitely going to sign.
I think a midfield of his profile, I'm saying a lot better than Ndidi. It's what Villa would want: rangy, athletic, box to box, can get in the box, good defensively. I think that's what Villa are looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I had it on reasonably good authority that they were looking at him, not that they were going to sign him. I never ever said that. I just said that there was an interest there. But you can't say anything on YouTube or tweet anything. Everything will always come back.
I find YouTube a lot nicer, I do.
No, to be fair, that came through on that question came through on Twitter. I've seen a few people recently I'll tweet about something random. I could tweet about England and someone will go, "Where's Ndidi?" It's honestly just what happened. That's the game. Daryl Keeney's asking about Chiesa again, someone that was linked 12 months ago. I don't see it personally, but I could be wrong.
No, Emery's got and Monchi. I think that was the type of profile player that they probably like. They like that. They'd like a winger, but at the same time, there's questions over Chiesa in terms of his stock was so high Euro 2021, right? Injuries, but now the fact that Juventus are reportedly allowing him to leave for 25 million and injuries as well, similar to Zaniolo. They were in the COVID era, left-footed Italian. Their stock was huge, but I think it'd be worrying. But I think he's on a big wage as well, so it might not be the smartest signing.
Yeah, Darren Rouson's tried to have a pop at me about Jack Butland a few years ago, but he's called him Buckland. So if you're going to have a pop, at least get the name right that you're having a go at me about. Stand by. I stand by. Jack Butland was coming. It was 95% done. I just went a little bit early, and I learned my lesson from that, and I've never ever done it again. But yeah, maybe he'll come one day. You never know. And when he does, I will be digging out that tweet from 2019. If Jack Butland signs in 2029, I'll be digging out that tweet from 2019 and saying, I told you he was coming. Right then, let's go, Jacob. Thank you very much for joining me today. Always a pleasure. Luke Roper is our sponsor for this show. If you want to get 20% off everything they have to offer, then use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off. Just that holiday season is coming up, of course. So yeah, if you want to get some holiday clothes, some gym clothes, some clothes for going out, you'll get 20% off. Thanks to Lee for stepping in and producing for us today. And yeah, we'll be back next week. Go back and check out the special Morgan Rogers podcast that Greg and myself did earlier on in the week. I keep asking for Apple Podcast reviews and absolutely no one is giving us one. But if you are listening via Apple Podcast, please leave us a nice review and 5 stars. That would be very much appreciated, and do all those good things on YouTube and Spotify as well. God, next time we do a show, England could be Euro 2024 champions. That is absolutely mad considering what I was thinking a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, enjoy watching England on Sunday as best you can. But as always, up the Villa.